Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going over the best build for Season 23 for Wizard, but technically, as of right now, it is the strongest build in the entire game for this season, or patch 2.7. But anyways, let's go ahead and hop right into it. So with the new and improved FireBirds set, it is actually going to be one of the best builds because it kind of plays different too, so make sure you guys watch this whole video. Otherwise you might get kind of lost if you want to change up the build in any way, as there are going to be multiple different ways to play the build depending on what your gear looks like. So just as a heads up, this is going to be for season 23. However, if you are playing on the game client version 2.7, you will be able to actually get the new Firebirds for free. If you have the older Firebirds, it will actually update it, so you don't even have to collect this entire set, which is really awesome. But anyways, let's go ahead and briefly go over the new changes with the Firebird set, and then we'll go ahead and go over the different skills and how you're going to be utilizing them, and then we'll go into the pieces of gear and what you're trying to roll on every single one. But starting right off, in terms of the newer and improved Firebirds, what is the newer changes? So with the 2-piece bonus, you're going to be able to make it so Disintegrate ignites the enemy, making them take 3000% weapon damage until they die, and then when you die, a meteor will fall on you and it will revive you. That actually is an older effect, and it's kind of still nice to have, but with a 4-piece bonus, casting Disintegrate adds a combustion stack that reduces the cooldown of Teleport by 2% per stack, and that will stack up to 50 times. And then you also gain 80% damage reduction while maintaining combustion stacks. And then with the 6-piece bonus, you gain 5000% increased damage while Ignite is applied to a target, and hitting an Ignite enemy with a non-channeling fire spell deals Ignite damage multiplied by the combustion stacks. So pretty much what that means is you're using Disintegrate to ignite the enemies, which is the main source of our initial damage buildup, right? So we're going to ignite those enemies, and then what's actually going to be dealing our damage. Previously, there was a build that we would just use Spectral Blade and attack super fast with this after igniting those enemies, and then that's what's going to be dealing our damage. But now with the newer build, Mirror Images is going to be actually the main source of damage, which is really awesome over here, and it kind of plays different. It does technically rely on the AI though, so keep that in mind as well. If you guys don't like playing with the AI, I will have a build that I will also link down below. It's not technically as efficient, but it's still really strong. You could easily push GR 100 plus with it, but this is just a lot more different, as previously Spectral Blade Flame Blades was the way to go. In fact, I would say you don't even need to really cast your Spectral Blade Flame Blades at all. It actually could technically lower your DPS depending on the situation, how many stacks you're actually building up with it, but your mirror images are going to be essentially dealing your damage. Basically, the bonuses that you get with the Firebird set, you will be able to have them apply that amount of damage because it's a non-channeling skill that they will be casting. So even though it is technically a pet that is going to be applying it, you don't need to scale your pet's damage. But there is something that we'll get into in a moment for the build that does technically involve pets, but for the most part, they're not actually dealing the massive amount of damage. They're applying the different amount of damage from a non-channeling skill, if that makes any sense. So they technically are your damage source, but not really. They're applying the damage that you're applying, if that makes any sense. I just want to go ahead and throw that out there for you guys. But in terms of the gameplay, it's pretty much you use Disintegrate, ignite the enemies, and make sure your mirror images are up, because that's what's going to be applying that damage. Now, you don't really have to cast the Spectral Blade. They will do it on their own. In fact, you want them to cast it. Now, the other skill that you're going to be using is either Frost Nova with Bone Chill to make it so the enemies are going to be frozen, which you guys are seeing here in the gameplay right now. But I will change up the gameplay in a second, and you will see the other build that will be using Magic Weapon with Deflection, which doesn't really need to be explained other than you cast it. That's a buff. It just makes it so you have extra survivability. Because the AI is not maybe the smartest in a lot of circumstances, I personally really like Frost Nova because it makes it so the AI just holds still, and then it's technically another way for you to get different sources of survivability, because if the enemy is frozen, well, he's not going to be dealing any damage, and this also will be increasing your damage. There are other builds that you can use with slow time, like we're talking top 5 builds right now on the leaderboards. Most of them are going to be using Frost Nova as well as Magic Weapon Deflection, but Slow Time is technically on there, and I'll go ahead and talk about other things that you guys can go ahead and swap in and out just in case you are still like leveling up and you might not have all of your pieces of gear perfect yet, I'll give you guys some suggestions. But pretty much those are the only variations in terms of the skill. But regardless of which one you're using, just activate it. It's nothing other than like Frost Nova with Bone Chill. You want to try to do it when obviously there's a little bit more of a density versus just like one small monster. Try to use it on elites more so. And then mirror images, just keep that up pretty much the whole time. It shouldn't be too difficult as long as you have about 60% cooldown reduction, which is not too difficult for this build as it will be running Captain Crimson set. And you want to run the duplicate runes, so that gives you more of the images. Also want to mention other sources that give you images like the Hanta Voxel Amulet, or if you use the teleport to summon the decoys, those will not actually activate. For whatever reason, they're just not coded correctly, so don't try to run other sources of images or clones. They just don't work. And then you want Explosive Blast with Chain Reaction. This is going to grant us extra survivability with our Orb of Infinite Depth. Plus, it's another fire skill that is activating the extra proc. And with Orb of Infinite Depth, that's going to give us extra survivability, and on top of that, extra damage. But with Teleport, yeah, Safe Passage, that's going to give you damage reduction. And then Flame Blades, you don't really need to actually activate that. But Chaos Nexus is nice. I've seen a few people try the extra width of the beam, but I like Chaos Nexus just because it lets you target more things, and pretty much this is on every single build. There was one person that was using the increased width of the beam, but pretty much, yeah, you're good to go on Chaos Nexus, I would say, overall. Now, in terms of the passes, Audacity is great. Galvanizing Ward is also really strong. Evocation for extra cooldown, because your clones are really tied to your main source of your damage anyways. And then the last one is kind of optional. You can go with Elemental Exposure. You can go with a lot of different things. Pick the one that you want. I've seen people run Power Hungry that are on the top 5 of the leaderboards. I would say these 3 are going to be optimal for most people. And then there's also another one, Unwavering Will, that I've seen on a lot of different builds as well. So pick the passives that you want the most. I really personally think Audacity and Evocation are going to be on like 90% of them. But again, there's some room for options here. For the Kanai's Cube, we've got the Orb of Infinite Depth for more damage, more survivability. Then we got Tasker and Theo, or you can run the Mantle of Channeling. Either one is fine. If you want more damage, the Tasker and Theo is going to be better. If you want more survivability, Mantle of Channeling, because you get increased damage and damage reduction. And then Royal Ring of Grandeur, because, well, you need it in this build. Now, in terms of the pieces of gear, we're going to be running the 6 piece of FireBird, but 5 technically with the Royal Ring of Grandeur. Keep in mind, you can swap any of these parts in and out. Like, if you want to run the Captain Crimson's boots instead of the pants, feel free to do that. Doesn't really matter here. But the important roles on here, pretty much you're not going to be scaling any source of like damage, as in you're not going to try to roll Disintegrate damage, or you're not going to run Explosive Blast damage, because this just scales with everything. So it's kind of nice for it. It's a lot easier to roll your pieces of gear. So the important thing on the helm is just really getting that crit hit chance, but anything else for survivability like Vitality, Life percent, that's totally fine too. And then we want a diamond in the helm for extra cooldown reduction. And then for the amulet, you're going to be running the Traveler's Pledge set, the Endless Walk. So that's going to be the amulet as well as the ring. And you basically just want the same thing on most Diablo builds. Crit hit chance, crit hit damage where you can get it. However, this build doesn't really need area damage because the clones, they're not going to be benefiting off of it just the way that they work. Apparently, it doesn't work with area damage. So that is one thing that would be different than most other Diablo builds. If you happen to get, high enough in the Paragon department, you can roll off that plus intelligence for that bonus of fire skills, which can be kind of nice. And then for our shoulders, if you can get the cooldown reduction on it, that's the most important thing with it. And then you can get like Vitality, Life percent, that's totally fine. But you just want main stat and then that cooldown reduction. Those are the most important stats on the shoulder piece. And then for the gloves, crit hit chance, crit hit damage, and cooldown reduction are the main things that you want to get with it. Even if you roll off the main stat, again, once you get high enough, like if you're in like 2,000-3,000 paragons, you can do that as well. And then for the chest piece, we got another piece of FireBird. Nothing important on this other than if you can get the reduction of damage from elites, that could be something to look out for. And then for the braces, we're going to be running Augilds. Same thing with the shoulders. So 2 pieces of Augilds. This is actually, again, something that you can swap in and out. Keep in mind, if you want to run the FireBird shoulders, just swap whatever piece out that you want to. You want to make sure you do have to run the bracers though. This is what is required. The shoulders again can be swapped out with torso, whatever. But you just want that fire skill damage and then also that crit hit chance, and then get your main stat And then if you can get vitality on it too, awesome. If not, well, you can get armor, whatever. Sometimes earlier on, you don't want to do the farming of the bounties. I get it. So that can be something to keep in mind as well. If you just want to like kind of skim by right in the very beginning. And then for the belt, we want Captain Crimson's. This is going to be mandatory. But again, if you don't want to run the pants, you want to run the boots instead, that's fine. Nothing too important here other than just getting all of like the defensive stats. So that's going to be life percentage, armor instead of all resist because you are going to be playing wizard, so you're going to be scaling with all resist anyways from your main stat. But we're pretty much putting in the pieces of gear, we're putting all rubies, or you can throw in emeralds, it doesn't really matter. But if you want more damage, technically yes, topazes can indeed be there. But because we're going to be able to have enough damage anyways with the build, we opted to put in some strength gems, so rubies in here. And then for the other ring, compass rose, again, cooldown reduction is very important for the build, just like most builds in Diablo. Then crit chance, crit damage if you can get it. And then the other ring is going to be a convention of elements, just like in most Diablo builds. If you can get crit chance, crit damage, cooldown reduction, main stat, totally fine. Keep in mind, you just want to at least get about 60-ish% cooldown reduction. The ideal number is actually 66%, but pretty much anywhere above 60%, you'll be a-okay for that. Now, in terms of the, actually, let's finish off the equipment before we go over to the gems. For the other offhand, we just want to have FireBird's Eye. This is hard to get it to roll everything correct on it, but you do want to get that critical hits grant arcane power. That's actually one of the most important things, as well as getting that cooldown reduction. If you can get it on here, it's nice, but it's hard to get the crit chance to also roll on it, but FireBird's Eye is what you want. Then we have the FireBird's boots over here. Nothing important for damage that you need to roll on it, basically just all the defensive stats that you can get on it. And then with our main weapon, we want to get Death Wish. So this is going to be our main source of bonus damage when we are channeling our arcane torrent disintegrate. Is basically our skill. We get to get a huge, massive damage addition to all of our damage. So this is quite nice for that. If you can get that cooldown reduction on it, that is ideal. And on top of that, elite damage or just percent damage. Any of combination of those is great. But in terms of the legendary gems, we're going to be running Taeguk because it's going to be a channel build, so you definitely want that. And then here's a pet thing. Now, you only need to get this to rank 25 because you just want that damage reduction to your pets. The increasing damage doesn't matter like at all. So just get this to 25, you're good to go. Then start maxing out, I would say, Taeguk first because it's going to be something that increases your survivability as well as your damage. Now, the other last gem, Bane of the Trap, it's pretty much in every Diablo build. Now, important thing, with the elemental exposure, try to get something that's non-fire or arcane on your weapon because this will actually apply your elemental exposure if you're running it. By all means, if you don't want to run it, doesn't matter, but that is something important to go ahead and mention. Now, for other things, you can run an Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac, you can run Unity for the build. It kind of depends on what you are going for. Again, in the very beginning, when you don't get these cooldown reduction numbers, sometimes it can be better to, let's say, get Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac so you can maintain certain skills at more of an uptime because it is kind of important to have those clones up as often as possible. But I want to mention something really quick. If you have like a channeling pylon, don't just cast your clones again and again because they have to like spawn in and you can't just get like multiple stacks of clones. You can only get those 4 clones. So don't try to overlap it because it's just going to make the AI target something, try to go for a skill, and then they're just going to get messed up because you resummon them and then they have to retarget something. So keep that in mind as well, as that is quite important. But those are the only real like variations with the build for the most part. And I'll also pin those down below in case I was too fast on anything, just so you guys can read and go over all of the equipment. But on top of that, if you guys want to know what follower is the best, pretty much the Scoundrel is kind of the go-to, but pick and choose the one that you want. I will also leave a video down below that will go over the best follower guide for Season 23 or Patch 2.7 that will get you ready to go. But if you're missing the cooldown, Enchantress might be better in the very, very beginning, but Scoundrel is going to definitely give you way more DPS. But that's going to go ahead and wrap up the video. If you guys enjoyed it, drop a like on it, and if you're new here and want to see more Diablo content, more action RPG stuff, as Outriders just came out, and I've been playing that, and I'll be dropping a video review of that game very soon. But take care, and I'll catch you guys on the next video, and I'm out. Peace.